This episode, plumbing myths that persist amongst your customers. In this episode, the Handyman Pros want you to start the new year off right by busting some of the myths in plumbing that can cost you big dollars.
Welcome to the Handyman Pros radio show. Home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros.
Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros radio show, where our goal is to help save you time, money, and aggravation on your home maintenance and repair. This edition is entitled Plumbing Myths That Persist Amongst Your Customers, or perhaps persist in your mind. To help me explain, I'm here with my ever-cheerful co-host and old buddy John. Johnny, we're up early this morning. What has been going on in your life?
Well, I've been rousted from my bed. That's one. So
I know, John, but it is noon after all. It is noon. Come on now.
Yeah, right.
There's a
right.
joke.
Well,
folks.
you know us. I have been doing some more trim work, and every time I go over to somebody's house, it's like the same story. You know, like it's all rotted away on the outside. You know, so and it's easy to replace now. But boy, I'll tell you, I bet I could go around to everybody's house and get, just from a survey standpoint and get work that way if I wanted to.
Oh,
it's crazy.
No kidding. Yeah.
So
it's
folks,
crazy.
but
I'm going to give you some context on this job that John's talking about. This is a customer. It's a longtime customer that John has, and he actually lives, very close in his neighborhood. And he has a large house, and it's, how do we want to say this, John? It's extremely ornate. He has a lot of
extremely
trim. Yeah, a lot of exterior trim.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before, and I'm not sure that making things that ornate is a good thing. It looks good when the guys walk away from the job, but after about 4 years or so, it's here we go.
Well,
so
it doesn't help that they used interior trim wood for everything that they did outside. So, folks, interior trim wood is not very good quality, and it just, once it gets wet, it starts to a downhill grade. Anyway, with that, Johnny, you came on an article from plumbermag.com, right?
Yeah, I did, and I'll tell you that it's brought back some memories. That I've been doing a lot of plumbing in the past couple of months, really. But this thing kind of brought back a couple of memories of what we ran into. But I thought it would help to just kind of if we kind of discuss this and lay out what we see when we are out there plumbing. Now, a lot of the guys out there the guys and gals out there that are doing this kind of work run into this probably pretty regularly. But from the homeowner's perspective, you got to be very careful of what you put down your sink, or your toilet or whatever.
I like gasoline and matches myself, but anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, cherry bombs. But people, you just have to be really cognizant. We've addressed some of this before, but this article was in Plumber Mag by, look at the bylines, by Anthony Quinn. And no, I guess that's not the guy that played Zorba the Greek, because he's been long dead.
Right.
But
John, you age yourself. But anyway, keep going.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah. So what we thought about was just kind of these persistent kind of myths that are out there. And number one amongst this is you'll see packages out there of flushable baby wipes,
or flushable wipes in general.
Yes,
in general. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't be doing that.
Hey, I can write on the package that it's flushable. That doesn't mean it is. Okay.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
And or how do we want to say this? That it's good for your plumbing, that it's good for your it might get down into your plumbing fine, it might flush down, and it might be fine. The question is what happens further downstream. And it doesn't have to be that far downstream. You get a flushable wipe wrapped up in your pipe somewhere in your house, you've got a major problem. And it's a major problem because it's not snakeable. It's not just they run the snake down there and it cleans it out. It can be like a major blockage that causes huge problems. We've addressed this multiple times. But every day, John, we go in these homes, and what do we see sitting on the back of the toilet?
Yeah, exactly. Those flushable wipes.
Flushable wipes.
Yeah, especially from the younger folks out there that have the kids, you know, that are bringing up the kids.
Yep.
And I'll tell you the other thing is that I noticed from just from our plumber friends, I've talked to them not too long ago about this whole thing, and that's a good part of their business.
It's yeah. I guess that's the question. You can use them, folks, if you want, but understand it's not if it happens, it's when it happens, and then you're going to pay, and you're going to pay big to get it cleaned out. It's not really a job that I know I would do personally. As a handyman, I wouldn't try to clean it out if I can't snake it. If it's not a simple hair clog kind of thing, forget it. I'm done.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. I'll address it because I know that they those guys charge. They'll scope it first, right? And they'll charge you about $350 just to scope the whole thing out.
Yep.
Just to take a look down through those pipes, and and then they're going to have to go through the process of routing if they can get it through. So you're probably looking at least $350 to $500 to do something like that. So just don't do that. And these things are, and also if you're on a septic system,
septic and sewer, John, don't kid yourself.
Yeah.
They'll clog up a 4-inch sewer line. And if you're just going out to the sewer, and if it's between the house and the sewer and the actual sewer where it connects to the sewer, it's your responsibility. You get a baby wipe in there, and then it congeals, and we've talked about this multiple times, but it congeals in with any kind of grease and any kind of soap too. So the soap comes down the line, and it clogs up on it, and it just creates this stoppage. And you get a stoppage, now again, it's going to be $500 minimum if they can get it clear. And if they can't get it clear, it's a dig job. Now you're into the thousands. You're into the thousands, and it happens every single day. We see it in the plumber rags. In the plumber, we call them the rags. They're not really rags, but in the plumber trade magazines, I'm a member of, because of my former association selling trucks into the sewer pumping business. I still see every day people are talking about it. Every single day. And every single day they go, why do you do this? Why, whatever. But whatever. It's a whatever. If you want to, folks, if you want to, it's fine. But understand, you're probably going to pay at some point. Nothing is free. So anyway,
it's a pretty exciting life you got there, Larry, with the going into the sewer magazines every day.
I mean, it's just it is.
You're exciting.
Keep
guy.
It clean, buddy. Keep it clean. All right.
Okay.
Let's move on to number 2.
Go through that. So don't get caught up in that one.
Yep. So let's talk about dripping faucets, right, Johnny? That's number 2 on our list. Dripping faucets or dripping toilets. I'm going to add toilets in there too, right? So you got a slow leak. Not a big deal, is it, John?
It is a big deal. I had just done some well, like I said earlier, I did a lot of plumbing in the last couple of months, and one of them happened to be a slow leak, the drip. And it was dripping at, I don't know, maybe one drop every, 20 seconds or something. Yep. But, you add that up, and that's a lot. And the other thing is, and we've talked about this before, but along with your point on the toilet, is a lot of times you won't even see it or hear it.
Right.
So a lot of times you really have to just watch it, the best you can to see if you do have something like that. And I relayed this story before, is that I had one that was, I didn't even hear it in my master bath, and it was noticeable. It was noticeable on the water bill.
Your water bill was noticeable. Yes,
it was noticeable. So that's we've talked about that too. Besides, keep an eye on that. But these small little drips, you need to get those fixed. You can't ignore them and say that's going to be a normal part of the house.
So let's just talk the math for a minute, and if you do have a slow leak, take a 1-gallon container and put it in there and see how long it takes to fill it up. It will fill up probably twice a day, so that's 2 gallons a day times. And you don't think that's a lot, and it's not, but it is, and it adds up quickly. I'm going to tell you this is another little aside to the same kind of situation, right? So there's the quote, I'll call it the downstream effect. Now, if you're on sewer, this doesn't really, well, it does matter because it'll affect your sewer bill too, right? Because your sewer's paid on the water that comes into the house. So your sewer bill, if you have sewer, gets paid on the water that comes into the house. So the more water you use, the more you pay for sewer. Usually it's about 4 times what the water bill is. 3 to 4 times, depends on the municipality. Anyway, be that as it may, you're paying for it to come in, you're paying for it to go out. If you have a septic system, what does it do to your septic system? Well, it causes your septic system to be constantly leaching water out, which is it's not that it's bad, but it's also not as good for your system as it could be. So the systems are designed to work, they're not designed designed to work with a constant flow of water through it. And you think it's not a lot, but a gallon here, a gallon there, it adds up every single day, because that is, John, when does that thing stop? That's right, never. So it's 24/7. You probably use 4 gallons a day of water on that 20-second leak, on that 20-second drip. You'll probably use 4 gallons, because if it fills up twice in an 8 to 10 hour day, you're not counting your overnight, because it never stops. And toilets are probably even worse, because you don't hear them. You see them only if you're really observant. You'll see that little trickle of water running down the side of the bowl, and you just kind of got to get on top of it. It's not like an end of the world kind of struggle, but gosh, it'll save you some money. It really will. And you just alluded to it even in yourself. You saw a good, you noticed it. Let's put it that way. You noticed the difference.
I mean, I think one of the things that, when we're talking about this is, here's a little tip. Here's a little tip for you, is that, if you think that your toilet's leaking, just put a little, food coloring in the upper, tank.
Oh, that's a good tip. I forgot about that one. I've done it before.
And just see if that's, I would recommend any color but red.
Johnny. Not nice.
But so nobody freaks out, right? But
yeah, exactly.
Then you'll see if it's leaching out into the bowl. And like I said, I had one that it's hidden, man. I tell you, it'll get away from you. So, all these things, all these little tips about the drips, don't make it a normal part of your life.
Yeah, it shouldn't be normal.
Get that fixed, because you're absolutely right. If you put a container under there and see how much it's dripping, do yourself a favor and get a new faucet or whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Fix your toilet. So
yeah, whatever. Yeah, because the cost is relatively small compared to the water bill, particularly when you amortize it out over a year, and then it really gets. And then we don't even want to get into environmental impact and stuff. Blah blah blah. It's more than just that. If everybody had a slow leak, the total gallons of water that would be immense. So
and plus it gives you a chance to get a new faucet.
That's right. Right. Yeah. That's exactly right.
Time to upgrade.
It's time to upgrade. All right. What's next, John?
One of the ones that that I've addressed some point is a lot of people with garbage disposals or not, pouring hot grease down the kitchen sink.
Yep.
When I saw this, this was just like a no-brainer, but again, the no-brainer is it happens all the time. All the time. And you match that up with those flushable baby wipes and stuff like that, and then you've got a real issue. So, you don't ever pour anything like that down the kitchen sink. Whether you have a garbage disposal or not. So, it's going somewhere. It might be, inside your house, outside your house, but it's going somewhere, and it's going to congeal.
Yeah, and so hot grease too, depending on how hot grease you're pouring down there. But if you pour really hot grease down there, John, what are pipes made of underneath your sink most of the time?
Yeah, most of them are plastic.
Yeah. And so, folks, you pour really hot grease in there, like right off the stove, you're going to melt your pipes. Now, you think that's funny, but I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen it. And you're like, oh, my God, So so there's 2 issues there. There's actually 3 or 4 issues there. But, yes, to John's point, it does congeal. It goes down. Now, all grease will do that, all right? Fats, oils, and greases will do that. It all just depends on temperature. And depending on where you live, we don't have so much of a problem with it here in the South. We do, but it's not as great. But if you live in the North, you can pour things like coconut oil and vegetable oil down the sink, and it'll congeal just at about 50 degrees. It starts to get solid. Well, you think, 50 degrees, that's not very hot. Well, your average sewer system doesn't get to be that hot. So, it's not that warm. It'll run, in a northern climate, probably running around the 40-degree range. Underground, it's probably 40 degrees in there, because the septic tank or the sewer always generates a little bit of heat via the biodegrading of the products and stuff like that. So it's always warm in there, but it's not that warm, and so you still get it. And by the way, it's not just the flushable wipes that stuff congeals with. It's hair, it's soap,
everything.
It's everything, and they call it fog. It's fats, oils, and greases, and you'll see it on the side of like septic pump trucks. Fog approved, FOG, and it's really really not good for your sewer and or septic system to run that down. And by the way, you think, oh, once it gets to the sewer, it's not a big deal. Well, your tax dollars do go to pay for sewer rotting trucks and also these big hydro excavating trucks to clean that stuff out of your sewer. And those trucks, coming from personal experience, cost a minimum of around $250,000 and up to $1 million or more. The most expensive one I ever built was $1 million. It was $1 million for the truck. Most of that in the body, in the pump and the pressure washing systems. So your municipalities all have to buy that stuff. So folks, it costs you in your tax dollars. And those trucks are not inexpensive, but they're a necessary evil. And most of it comes from fats, oils, and greases. Literally, it's not even an exaggeration.
Yeah, and if you keep your ear to the track on this story now that we're talking about it, you'll see stories from around the country, especially in the larger cities, that they battle this all the time.
Yeah, and these aren't small clogs like some of those.
No. These are major. These are big ones. And like I said, now that we're talking about it, and it kind of comes at top of mind. Keep your ear to the track on some of these stories that come out. I just not too long ago, probably 6 months ago, I heard one from New York that they had a huge clog, a huge problem.
How big was it? Do you know? I mean, I've seen pictures of them basketball sized and bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that big, and that'll clog up a 6-inch sewer main. It clogs up. I mean, that's a big line, folks. That's a lot. There's a lot of water coming through that. So anyway, moving on. What's the next thing, John?
Well, the next thing is one of the things that I'm very cognizant of that I never used to be, and only from the fact that to really fix something right, I might have to get in there and do it, and that is pouring chemical drain cleaners down the sink and saying that that's safe, if you've got a clog.
Right.
Okay, especially when you have a clog, because, okay, now you pour this very caustic material down the sink and it's not going anywhere. You got to go through that stuff to fix the problem. Or when you take it apart, that stuff's going to come back out of there somewhere.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's really caustic. I grew up with a girl that got some of it on her hand that just ate a big hole in her hand, on the outside of her hand. But it was, that stuff is, like Drano and all that kind of stuff is very, very caustic, and you have to be very careful with it. Sometimes, I'll say this. Sometimes when the drain is running and it's a little slow and you pour it down there, it does work, no doubt. But if you have a solid clog and it's not going anywhere, boy, think of some other things before you get to that stage, because it's you're not going to be doing the plumber any favors or yourself with that stuff coming back out of there at some point.
Right. So give some people some ideas of what are the first two things that they should do?
Well, there's a lot of things you can do. If you're talking about it, just a total clog sink.
Like let's just say you have a clog sink. What's the first thing? Almost everybody has a plunger, right?
I would try a plunger.
Yep.
Try a plunger. And there's two types of plungers. One's built for toilets, the other's built for sinks. I get away with one on each, but you'll see the difference in the store. Anyways, but try a plunger and that should. Most of the times that should work.
Yeah, and
okay.
And let me just give the physics behind the plunger. What it does is it creates a pressure spike basically via air, right? So as you plunge down, it puts pressure on that pipe and it pushes that clog. It just pushes that clog, and just like all things in pipes, once you get it moving, generally it'll continue to flow downhill, provided your plumbing is proper and correctly installed. But once you get it moving, then you're good, and it'll flush all that stuff down the stream. So try the plunger first. That's always the one. Just try it, and it might work, it might not. If it's a really bad clog, it might not. The second thing that I would do if you have one is just a snake, right? And for sinks, particularly like bathroom sinks and things like that. If you've got a bathroom sink clog, go down to the big box store. They make those little zip. What do they call them? Zip strips or something like that?
Yeah, zip strips. Yeah, they
they're
look
about
like a fish
$2.
bone.
Yeah, they look like a fish bone. Yeah, and they're about $2, and you stick it down in there, and particularly for in a bathroom sink, I use them. I have them on the truck all the time, and somebody says, "Oh, my sink's running slow," and I don't even charge people for this if they tell me it's running slow. Or if I notice it's running slow, I go get the zip strip. You run that thing in and out of there a couple times, and of course, 9 out of 10 times, what comes out is a giant hairball with a lot of soap in it, right?
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, boom, it's clear, and it runs cleanly. And that's the second thing. And if you have an actual snake, you can snake it too. But I'm not saying go out and buy a snake, but I'm definitely saying go out and buy a zip stick for they're literally like $2.
So let me address this one other way here, and that is the chemical. Putting a chemical cleaner down there first is not your first go-to, because if you wind up plunging it, that stuff is going to be flying everywhere.
Yep.
And once that stuff hits your skin or your eyes, you got a bad day coming.
Yeah,
you got a bad day coming. So, these are all really good. These are all really good tips right here. And I'll tell you one last tip on this is that, especially for the girls out there that the daughters and stuff. It happened to me is that they're really that hair gets really long.
Yes.
And ask them to take a step back when they're combing their hair from the sink. So the hair is going on the floor, so you can vacuum it up that way instead of it down into the sink.
So
because
my wife,
I've been I was just going to say, Larry, I just did I did a plumbing job last year that, this thing was so unbelievable. I pulled a wig out of there. Okay, it was so gross, and it was so long. And I asked the girl, she was standing there. I said, was this sink kind of slow? She goes, oh, yeah, it was barely running. I'm like, so.
Yeah, here you go.
Anyways.
So my wife has long hair. She has long black hair. And she's really good at, she puts it in the sink, but she wipes it up before she puts any water down it. So that's the other part of the tip. Just clean it up. Now you talk about women. Now I'm going to tell you probably one of the worst ones I've ever seen was actually one that I did at one of my clients, and he just said, "Yeah, my sink's running slow," and it was the guy's sink, and it was whiskers. I don't know how they got clogged up, and his wife had really long hair, and I was expecting her sink to be the one that was slow, and I snaked her sink, and I pulled out not a wig, but I pulled out a fair amount of long hairs. But his sink was actually clogged, and it was soap. It was like soap and whiskers, and it was one of the worst ones I've ever seen. It was real. Yeah. Now I think that she probably cleaned hers out, more often. I'm not really sure, but anyway, it was really bad. So I'm not trying to belittle it, but I'm just saying it can happen to both sides.
Yeah. So folks, here's what you can do to kind of help yourselves out. Like once a month, run real hot water down the sink.
Yep.
And just let it as hot as you can get it.
And just let it run.
And just let it run down there. The other is I'll tell people is that, fill up your sink. Stop up your sink first. Fill up your sink with water and then pull the stopper so that you have all that water pressure going down in there to flush anything out of there too.
Right.
So, those are a couple other tips to, keep this to a minimum.
Yes.
But it builds up over time and you never know it because it's like anything, the sink gets a little slower and you don't really notice and you get adjusted to it. Then all of a sudden you got this issue. So anyways.
Yep. All right. Next.
Well, Larry, I'll let you take this one.
All right. So this is in the disposal. It says, it's good to use lemons to clean the disposal. Now, I personally take a little bit of I disagree with this to a certain degree, but lemons and or citrus has citric acid in it, and so according to this article, that eats away at the inside of your disposal. My personal opinion is if you're doing this, say, a couple of times a month, once or twice a month, maybe 3 times, even once a week, I don't think if you're just throwing one quarter of a lemon rind down there, I don't think you're going to put enough citric acid into your disposal to actually do any damage to the inside of the disposal. But to their point, it is an acidic product, so it's a caustic product, and you probably don't want to do it. Now, one thing we do advise, and I do this before I ever work on anybody's disposal, is I take a handful of ice or I take a bunch of ice and I put the ice down in there. Now, you use ice, why? Well, because if it does clog or if it does jam, the ice melts, it goes away, you can get at it. But ice will actually clean out the inside of your disposal really, really well. It actually almost polishes the inside of your disposal. It's kind of nice, especially, again, when I'm working on one, I don't want to stick my hand into a whole bunch of, old food goo, for lack of a better word. I don't know how to describe it. Throw in a whole bunch of ice, really pack it right down in there. Turn that disposal on, it'll grind it up. It makes a beautiful slushy, and then pour some water through it, and it flushes down the pipe, and it cleans it right out. It's really I tell a lot of people to do that. Just do it as a regular basis. Once a month, throw some ice in your disposal, a lot of ice, take a good handful, make sure it's filled. Grind that stuff up. It's amazing what it'll do. It helps keep the disposal running clean, too. Like the water flows out of it better. So if you've got a disposal that's kind of clogged up, throw some ice in there, grind it up, away you go. I throw a lemon in there every once in a while just for scent, so it gives a little better smell. But technically, don't leave it in there forever, right? That's, I guess, the question.
Yeah, I mean, so the better disposals are going to be all stainless steel parts, so that's not going to really affect it much. But, we've talked about this before on the show of using lemons and salt, to polish brass. And, it is amazing how caustic that citric acid can get. So I understand their point here is that, stay away from it that way. But, most of the modern stuff is stainless steel.
Yeah, and if you throw it in there and grind it up and run the water like you're supposed to, you're washing it downstream pretty rapidly. I mean, it's not like hydrochloric acid where you throw it in and it starts bubbling up and it's blah blah. Anyway, all right. What's the next one, John?
The next one is the fluctuating water pressure is okay.
Yeah, that's one
okay.
Of our favorites,
so this is one. Let me address this from two standpoints here. One is you turn your your faucet on and you notice your pressure's high, then it falls off, then it comes back on, then it falls off. It depends upon what you got going on in your house in terms of your water. Okay, if you're on city water and it's coming through something that's a pressure regulating valve, PRV valve that we've talked about before. That can be a real issue. Okay. Those things can go either way. They can break low or they can break high pressure or low pressure. And usually they break to the other side that's high and starts blowing out all your toilet parts and stuff is what we've talked about.
Yep.
The other is that you've got an air pressure tank in a house that might be on a well, and that air pressure tank has a bladder in it, like you guys out there or gals out there are familiar with accumulators. And once that bladder in there and it's inflated to a certain point, and then the water from the pump goes in there so that you have constant pressure, what happens is that that bladder has a puncture in it.
Yeah, and that can happen so according to modern code, you're supposed to put another one of the bladder tanks in on your hot water heater too. So that same thing can happen on the hot water side of your home. If you put too much pressure in it, it'll give you like a hot water spike, where the pressure in the tank is supposed to match the pressure that comes through your PRV valve. So if you set your PRV valve at 45 pounds of pressure, your tank should be 45. If you put 60 in there, it'll come out as a spike. And so there's two issues there, and it's not the bladder on the hot water tank isn't that big a deal, but you still want to address it. And generally, it's really simple. You just have to have a pressure gauge, and you just set the pressure back down. But PRV valves, yeah, modern. We're gonna take a step back. If you have a home that was built probably before about 1960, when all parts were metal, like your toilet tank parts were all metal and things, they didn't put PRV valves in older homes. And I've had several that I've redone on my rental side that actually didn't have PRV valves. So we put a PRV valve in because modern parts are all made of plastic, and the plastic is rated at about 60 psi top pressure. So if you're coming in at 120 from the street, you're going to start blowing that stuff up. And even your supply lines aren't rated that high, so you can cause a flood if you're not careful. So it's fluctuating water pressure is not okay. I will say this: if you have a well, you've got some different situations going on there, so you need to be cognizant. We're not going to get into that discussion because that's a
I will discussion. I will address that because I was on a well, and we went through this a number of times. So what you're going to experience if you are on a well is you're going to get the pump pressure.
Yep.
That's going to come through, and you're going to rise and fall off the pump pressure.
Yep.
And it's a real pain in the rump. And I'll tell you that. That's why they put an accumulator tank next to it to smooth that out.
Yep.
like a capacitor in a circuit. But the thing is, you just have to, what we're talking about here is you can't live with this stuff and say that it's normal.
Right.
I mean, these things really need to be these things really need to be addressed. And like you said, especially this water pressure, because it will take a toll on all these modern appliances. And not to belabor this, but they are made of plastic. That is all your plastic inflow valves and shutoffs on your ice makers, on your washing machines. It can blow those things out pretty quick, to the point that you're going to screw up a lot of appliances.
Yep. So, all right. So that's water pressure. Next myth, Johnny. This is one of my favorites. I'm going to put a brick in my toilet to save water.
Yeah, so it's the eureka thing, right? The volume goes up. And of course, at that point you're like, okay, well, I just decreased the volume of or increased the volume in the tank, or decreased it. I'm sorry, and so you're going to save water in the tank. The problem is that bricks deteriorate.
Well, it's that, and it also, folks. I hate to say this, but it's really true. You don't get the flush that you get when you just, like, number one, I can't even stand the 1.6 gallon flushes because I end up flushing multiple times. It doesn't save you any water. In fact, it probably costs you water by the time you now I'm talking about your solid waste, not your liquid waste, blah blah blah. But I'm just saying it really does. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work. And I've heard of all kinds of other things like this. Modern day toilets, you can, basically there's adjustments in there on the parts to do basically the same thing. What the article here is really addressing is that there's other ways of conserving water and without destroying the inside of your toilet. Basically, what's happening is the bricks are falling apart, and they do. Okay, after a while, pieces and parts come off those bricks, and where are they going to go? They're going to either lay on the bottom of the tank, or you're going to be flushing them down, or pretty soon they're stuck.
They stop
they're
the
keeping
flapper.
a stopper.
They keep the flapper.
The flapper open. Now the next thing you've got 20 gallons of water running out of there. It's just one big circle, right? So.
If it was designed for
a brick,
do it. If it was designed for a brick in it, they would design it that way. End of story.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Johnny, this is one of my favorites. So we've talked about the bleach. You have a bleach. We have a device. It's on our website that you actually can put in the water line that puts bleach in your toilet. And so this myth is that bleach tablets are the best for keeping your toilets clean.
Let me address this.
Yes.
It's not those. If you go on our website and look at the little blog that I wrote on this, and you can go out and buy this thing, okay? These things are tremendous. It's not bleach tablets. Let me make that clear. People out there are making bleach tablets that fit these things. Do not buy the bleach tablets because they stink. In your bathroom's going to smell, number one, like a swimming pool, and like a YMCA. And the other thing is that those tablets that come with this and that you can buy are bromides, and they do not stink, okay? And it delivers that directly through the fill tube into the bottom bowl itself.
Yes.
So that it never touches the parts. So there are bleach tablets out there that people, anything that you put inside the upper tank, okay, you're now running the risk of ruining and shortening the life of all the pieces and parts that are in there, especially that flapper valve that gets really hard and will not work again. You're going to be replacing those things. You're going to wonder why. And we're going to go back to, number, 3 or 4 on the list here about water pressure and all, all that kind of stuff is just, it's going to be running water. It's going to be everything. So be really careful about putting anything inside that tank. But if you look now, I can speak from experience because I've got 3 of them. I got 3 of them going, and they take like 5 minutes to install, and they work like a champ, these things. So I would advise everybody, go on out to the blog on our website and check it out.
There's a link there to buy it too if you want.
There's a
little bit of money for this one, a little tiny bit.
Yeah.
Of money,
so go out and check this thing out. They're probably around $20 or something for, I think, a couple of them or something. You'll see it, and once you see it, you'll see exactly how it works. And it's very simple, but it works like a champ.
Yeah.
So
I just want to do some ads on this. So to John's point, I think this article referred to the fact of taking like a large chlorine or any kind of tablet and sticking it in the upper tank. Not a good idea. Too much plastic, too much rubber, too many seals that need to be done. Anytime you add a chemical in there, it creates a situation of incompatibility. You're going to have issues. Okay, it's just the way it is. Again, if it was designed to have that in there, the manufacturers would tell you it's okay to do that. They don't tell you that's okay. Now, there are the ones that you hang up under the lid and that you hang up under the rim of the toilet, like the blue things and the tidy bowls and that kind of stuff. Those are okay because that's just down in the bottom portion of the tank. But it's a thing that's I personally think it's unsightly, right? It's just this item that John's talking about actually hooks to the fill line, so you don't see it. You don't see it, and it fills up, and it puts something in there. But folks, one of the other things is nothing beats a brush. Nothing beats a brush. Yeah. This is just kind of it's a way to beat the brush, meaning instead of having to brush every other day, you brush 4 times a month. Kind of thing. So
now I'll tell you, and I'll just plug this again. These things are tremendous.
Yep.
I mean, I've never. Yeah. I mean, this thing is. It's like well, it works. Let's just put it. You will be amazed. You'll be amazed. I mean, the crud that used to build up in there doesn't build up in there anymore. Ever.
Got it.
And I hardly ever. It's great. So, anyways, check it out.
That's at Handyman.
Check it out and see what you think.
That's at HandymanProsRadioshow.com. On the blog page, you can see it, and there's pictures and all that kind of good groovy stuff. Johnny, do you think, really, in all seriousness, the last time you took one of the spaceship apart, isn't that where you found that item? It was in the bathroom of the spaceship. Isn't that what it was?
Right next to the brick in the toilet.
All right, folks, if you enjoy the Handyman Pros radio show, please tell your friends and neighbors. Send them the link. Tell them to listen to these 2 idiots. They're something else, If you do have any questions, comments, or concerns, send us an email, questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. Check out our website, handymanprosradioshow.com. Subscribe to our newsletter. Got lots of great information on maintenance, upcoming shows, events, and more. We do have a Facebook group, too. That's at Handyman Pros, and you can follow us on Twitter as well, at Handyman Radio. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on the Handyman Pros radio show.